And then if folks downstairs can give us a countdown from 10 when we're going to go live, that'll be really helpful. Hello, welcome and bienvenidos to the official launch of the 2022 Azul U.S. Latinos and the Ocean poll. This is the first ever ocean poll focused on the public perceptions of U.S. Latinos. Yes, take that in, that is tremendous. I'm Betsy López-Wagner, a lifelong ocean advocate from the Great Lakes region. And as a partner of Azul, I'll be moderating our time together today. To our partners, friends, allies, and all of the beautiful faces I see here, and those that are at home, thank you for your support. Please stay tuned to hear how you can help to share this data and advance Latino representation and power in support of state and federal ocean justice policy. In just a moment, Marcela Gutiérrez-Graudiņš will come to the stage. She's the founder and executive director of Azul. Azul is an environmental justice organization that works with Latinos throughout the Americas to protect communities, coasts, and the ocean. Launched in 2011 as the first US organization devoted to elevating Latino voices in marine conservation and justice, Azul interweaves cultural fluency and grassroots organizing for people-centered policy outcomes. We're just honored to be able to now bring you Marce. Again, Marce's award-winning advocacy is visible from the local, hyper-local, on the ground to global level panels, summits. You will see her in opinions and editorial pages, publications including the Washington Post. You will see her work also featured through the United Nations. She is one of 5 women founders of the Ocean Justice Forum. She serves as a member of the California Coastal Conservancy's governing board, and she is also a member of the IUCN California Expert Assessment Group on the Green List. And so it is only fitting that these historic results that will be brought to you today by Azul really come from Marcela Gutiérrez-Graudiņš and this groundbreaking research team at Barreto Segura Partners. So now I am excited, honored, and completely overwhelmed with love to present to you Marcela Gutiérrez-Graudiņš.
Buenas tardes. Thank you so much for joining us. Like Betsy said, my name is Marcela Gutiérrez-Graudiņš. I'm so excited to have you all here. As we mentioned before, this is something that is the first time that it's happening. Believe it or not, we have so much other polling and such exciting polling in the last couple of years around Latinos and the environment, but we've never had one on oceans. And so it's very exciting for us. We've, for many years, actually been splicing and looking at data from other polls and looking at some of those ideas. And for years now, it's been our dream to be able to work with someone like Barreto Segura Partners to be able to undertake something like this at the national level. So it is exciting and a very privilege to be here today. It's very, like I said, very exciting. The results are even more exciting. They reflect both our experience and our in our work in the community, but it's one thing to see it in our anecdotal experience. It's another one to see it something like this in black and white at the national level with such great polling partners as Barreto Segura. So thoroughly excited, and today we are in for a treat. We have the distinct pleasure of having a keynote speaker to give us the remarks and Yep. So I'm very excited to have today joining us remotely the Deputy Director for Climate and the Environment at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Jane Lubchenco. If you've, give us a clap. If you follow any ocean policy, you know of her strong background and leadership in this subject. So I'm very excited to have her join us today and highlight these these results that really don't just reflect what some of us know, but portend exciting things ahead of us. That the strong support not just reflects those connections, but that political power in what could be and those great outcomes we could achieve soon enough. So if I get a thumbs up, I will go ahead and move on to yes. Dr. Lubchenco, I will go ahead and move on to yes. Dr. Lubchenco, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure.
Gracias, Marce. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes, ocean advocates. I am so excited to be here today to join you to hear the results of the first of its kind poll of Latino voters regarding ocean climate solutions and the protection of the marine environment. I personally can't wait to hear the results. Huge congratulations to Azul for initiating this poll and for sharing it with us. I first met Azul's founder, Marcela, a few years ago and was instantly a fan of Azul's unique mission and powerful vision. Gente powered and led. I love the organic focus of connecting family and community to ocean conservation. And the emphasis on solutions is near and dear to my heart, as is the willingness to partner where useful. And now in my current role here at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, where we value evidence and data as the basis for knowledge and action, I'm particularly excited to learn what the poll has uncovered. Hearing what people care about is powerful. We are all ears. And like you, we seek partnership and action to convert data and evidence into impact for all people. Now, I know from personal experiences that people from many different places and backgrounds care deeply about pressing environmental challenges: clean air, clean water, abundant wildlife, climate solutions, and natural spaces for all. They care about family, especially children. And these common values provide a starting point for action. Indeed, action, informed by values and evidence, is needed now more than ever. And here in the White House, following the president's lead, we are laser focused on action. Let me highlight a few of the actions we're taking and other things that we're working on. Very early on, President Biden issued clear and measurable targets to combat the climate crisis, our nature deficit, and racial injustice. And we see those as interrelated. President Biden set the nation's first ever conservation goal to conserve at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. The resulting America the Beautiful initiative emphasizes the importance of locally led conservation efforts, informed by evidence and knowledge. And it also frames conservation action as intimately connected with climate and equity goals. Last November, the United States announced that President Biden would join the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy. In partnership then with 16 other countries, we are committed to sustainable management of 100% of our exclusive economic zones through a sustainable ocean plan within 5 years of joining. We and the other ocean panel countries seek a triple bottom line: to protect the ocean effectively, produce from it sustainably, and prosper from it equitably. This balance of conservation, sustainable use, and equity makes for a powerful combination. But the emphasis is also on working with local communities and diverse partners. On the climate front, the president has set very ambitious goals and is directing a forceful all-of-government approach to tackling the climate crisis. While this work is fundamentally grounded in science, it is basically about people, about community, about good-paying jobs, about all of you, about our future. Recognizing that good policy requires engagement with other governments, with stakeholders, with voters, and with all of our nation, The president has set the bar high. We will combat the climate crisis in a just way that centers equity in all that we do. Pivoting to ocean policy more specifically, last month the White House released an environmental justice statement to guide activities and investments in ocean science and technology. And in the next few weeks, we will be releasing our priority areas for intensive exploration and characterization of the ocean based on geographic priorities and the 3 thematic priorities of climate, biodiversity, and environmental justice. We're also working on guidance that we will issue to federal agencies and departments about elevating Indigenous knowledge into our science and decision-making across government. When we think about conservation, we think evidence, knowledge, climate, equity, but also access. Last week, the president launched a federal interagency council on outdoor recreation that will work to create a more safe, affordable, and equitable opportunities to explore our nation's public lands and waters. So yes, we have been busy, and there's more on the way. We seek tangible benefits for people by listening to and working with them. We are hearing and seeing how rapidly the ocean and coasts are changing. And I suspect that will be reflected in Azul's polling results. We see, for example, the extent to which climate change is affecting shorelines, coastal and oceanic ecosystems in the myriad ways that we depend upon the ocean. Maritime shipping, fisheries, seafood, recreation, tourism, cultural heritage are all affected by climate change. There's no doubt that the ocean is a victim of climate change. But science is also telling us the ocean is also a powerful source of solutions to climate change. We're flipping the script from victim to solution. We know, for example, that the ocean might provide as much as 20% of the carbon emission reductions needed to get us to the 1.5-degree Paris Agreement target by 2050. We can harness clean energy from the ocean's wind and its waves. We can reduce the carbon footprint of shipping. We can create fully and highly protected marine protected areas that will enhance ocean health and contribute to climate solutions. Last month, the White House's Ocean Policy Committee committed to developing the first ever Ocean Climate Action Plan in partnership with agencies across the federal government and with input from the public. We believe that together we can do this. And in fact, many are waking up to the importance of a healthy ocean to a vibrant, just future. Part of our collective challenge is to take this knowledge, the information from your polling, and to create new stories about the ocean. Now, I know that Martha knows the power of story, for she says that she used to sell fish and now she saves them. So too, do we need new stories, new narratives about the ocean. For most of human history, the ocean was seen as so vast, so bountiful, that it was inconceivable that humans could have any impact on it. In other words, the narrative was that the ocean was too big to fail. Anyone who has been paying attention over the last few decades knows that that narrative was false. Unfortunately, a new narrative has taken hold. It's clear that there are many problems that affect the ocean, from depleted fisheries to climate change and ocean acidification, from bleached coral reefs to profuse plastic pollution. The intractable nature of these problems and their scale have led some to a new narrative that says the ocean is too big to fix. There are too many problems. They're too intractable. The vested interests are too powerful. I believe that narrative is false. From Azul's work to the UN Ocean Conference, we're seeing the emergence of a new narrative, one that understands that the ocean is at the center of our future, one that feels the deep connection that people have to the ocean, one that looks at the evidence that the ocean is key to tackling climate change, food security, and equity. In short, we're seeing the emergence of a new narrative that the ocean is too central to our future. It's too big to ignore. I should say that differently. The ocean is so central to our future, it's too big to ignore. So let me be clear. We have learned that the ocean is not too big to fail, nor is it too big to fix. We are just beginning to appreciate that the ocean is so central to our future that it is too big to ignore. So this fits right in with what we're going to hear from the polls. Gary, thank you so much in advance. I commend Azul for embracing this narrative and leading this important polling to understand the relevant perceptions of the Latino community in the US. I'm eager to hear the results. Thank you. Muchas gracias to Azul and to the Latino community for being engaged and providing leadership on these critical issues at this pivotal time. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Lubchenco.
Wow, an abundance of gratitude to Dr. Lubchenco for her ocean leadership, stewardship, and really tanto pasión for our community. Really, we feel it, and thank you for being with us. So, without further ado, we're going to present to you Gary Segura. So Gary is the president and co-founder of BSP Research and formerly was the co-founder of the research firm Latino Decisions. Gary holds a Ph.D. in political science and is currently the dean of the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs. He holds faculty appointments in public policy, Chicano-Chicana studies, and political science. Over the last 2 decades, Gary has directed polling research that has completed over 150,000 interviews of Americans of all backgrounds on all matters of political importance. He has briefed members of the House and Senate, as well as senior administrative officials, and appeared on NPR, NewsHour, Frontline, CBS Evening News, MSNBC, and numerous other outlets. Time magazine has called Segura's work the gold standard in Latino American polling, and here he is today, live and remote for us to go ahead and go through these incredible results. Gary, we're turning it over to you.
Thank you, everyone. And first of all, a huge thank you to Deputy Director Lubchenco and to Azul for pulling this event together. And a huge thank you to the team at Azul for involving BSP research in this project. As the folks at Azul know, this is a passion project for me. Some of my earlier work on Latino political attitudes focused on environmental attitudes almost more than 20 years ago now. So to come back to this topic and to turn our attention not from brownfields and air pollution, but to the ocean is really a wonderful opportunity and something I'm super excited about. So thanks for the opportunity to do the work. So I'm going to go through the slides and give you a sense of what we found as we did the poll. And then at the end, I think there's going to be time for questions. All right, so let me say a little bit about the survey. We interviewed 1,900 Latino registered voters. We did that across the United States, but we also had oversamples, concentrations in California, Texas, Florida, New England, the tri-state area, and the Chicago metro. And that was so that we would have analyzable subsamples. So we have results for the entire country, and then we have results for those particular locations. We fielded from May the 26th to June the 7th, just 7 weeks ago or so, 6 weeks ago. And we fielded by a combination of phone and online. We think it's very important to do both in order to have a representative sample. We also interviewed in both English and Spanish, which is the appropriate way to capture the entire attitude range of the Latino population. So let's talk about ocean issues. Latinos overwhelmingly agree that the ocean should be protected. When we asked the question in the agree-disagree format, climate change will put beaches and other areas in or near the ocean at risk. 84% of our respondents agreed or strongly agreed with that perception. Government should protect the ocean, even if it means not allowing the extraction of fish, oil, gas, or other resources. 80% of the Latino population agrees with that. I'm going to say an aside that you're going to see later in the slideshow. It's very easy to ask people's attitudes on things when we don't impose costs. And what you'll see later on is we actually start to ask our respondents, are they willing to walk their talk if these things raise prices or has cost to government or cost to them as individual families? And that's important because lots of people are in favor of lots of things, but it's only when they have to trade off against other priorities. And so you're going to see that these results hold up even when we ask people about the costs. We thought first about exploring the use of the ocean as a recreational space. 74% of our respondents believe that all beaches should be open to the public. They very much want that to happen. We asked if their experience was in any way negative. For example, is going to the beach too expensive for average people to enjoy? 44% of our respondents did agree with that, but 50% of our respondents said no. What you're seeing there is a mix of relatively open access in most parts of the country to the use of the beach, but the likelihood that most Latino communities do not live proximate to the beach and therefore have to engage in an effort to be there. Then we asked about the welcoming experience. Quote, I have sometimes felt not welcomed or experienced hostility when visiting a beach or a coastal area. While 52% of our respondents disagreed with that statement, 42% agree, suggesting that they have not always felt like it was a safe space for them to be. Now, this is not a surprise to those of us who have been studying this for a very long time, but the environment is an important issue for US Latinos. And what we did is we broke this out by region of the country to give you a little bit of a sense of the variation across types of Latinos, types of communities, generation of Latino, and so forth, to give you a sense of how this breaks out. So for example, 63%, or actually 95% of folks in California felt it was somewhat or very important environmental issues like pollution and climate change. In Florida, 95. In New England, 98. In New York and New Jersey, 97. So that seems at first glance to be pretty stable. But when you start to look at the strength of concern, the very important bar, the dark blue here, in this case, 63% of Californians felt it was very important, 68 in the tri-state area, 70 in Florida, and 84 in New England. So even though the numbers at first glance look very stable, when you look at the strength of concern, it varies quite dramatically. It's also important to note that you would not have guessed this probably going in, but the strength of concern in California is not as high as it is in Florida, even though we normally think of the California Latino population as being more ideologically progressive. And that has a lot to do, I think, with vulnerability. There are a few places in America more vulnerable to the effects of changes in the ocean and changes in the global environment than Florida. I also want to point out that New England is our consistently most progressive region across many, many questions, not every question, but the vast majority. And as you'll hear in a moment, surprisingly, the Chicagoland Metro came in second place, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So how strong are these various concerns? Well, as you can see, the numbers are very high across the board. Air pollution, 92%, water pollution, 92%, conserving space, 89, conserving the ocean, 91, global warming, 89, endangered species, 91, and not surprisingly more proximate to your family's experience, lead and chemicals in drinking water, 94%. So it doesn't matter which environmental issue you're looking at, there's variation, but on all of them, Latinos are quite concerned about the impacts on them and their families. What sort of action do you want to see take place, or do you think we need to take action, particularly with respect to the ocean? I'm going to start here with the bottom bar. The bottom bar is next to a question: polluted oceans are able to clean themselves. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? 67% of the Latino respondents somewhat or strongly disagreed with the magical notion that the ocean is unharmable or it can fix itself. And this is consistent with what Dr. Lubchenco had said. So it is very important to actually take action. The problem is not going to go away. As we go up the chart here, the ocean is important to maintaining my family traditions. 72% agree or strongly agree. Companies are more responsible than any group of people for the harm. 77%. The government should maintain open access to beaches and parks, 81%. The government should implement the strongest possible protections for the ocean, even if it is costly, 85%. We cannot be healthy if the environment's healthy is not health, 89%. Plastic products are a threat to the health of the environment, particularly the ocean, 90%. So that's very strong endorsement of a pro-action, pro-environment policy agenda. One interesting finding we have, and it's very consistent throughout the poll, is that we get stronger, even though the responses are strong everywhere, we get stronger responses from Spanish-speaking households than we do from English-speaking households. I have a couple of thoughts on why that might be the case, but let me illustrate the points first. On the question, government should implement the strongest possible protections for ocean areas that are important for conservation purposes, even if it is costly. While 79% of English-speaking Latino households agreed, 87% of Spanish-speaking households agreed. Similarly, the ocean is important to maintaining my family's culture, traditions, and culture. 64% in English-speaking households, 75% in Spanish-speaking households. Now, what might be going on here? Well, frankly, Spanish-speaking Latinos are more likely to be closer to the point of origin in the United States. They're either foreign-born or second generation. They're more proximate to the experience of having been a transnational person. In many instances, that means they're more proximate to a life lived much closer to nature, whether that be in rural, predominantly agricultural areas in Mexico and Central America, or whether that be in largely island nations of the Caribbean. So it is the proximity to environmental degradation and its effects. The proximity to the ocean, I think, is just higher among the Spanish-speaking population. US Latinos agree that ocean and environment are in crisis, and they disagree with inaction. So here's a variety of different proposals and attitudes. I believe plastic pollution poses a health risk to our communities, 86% agreement. I believe plastic pollution will get worse if the government does not do something to fix it, 86%. We do not need to worry about health of the oceans because we will develop new technologies, 31% agree, while 49% disagree. So this is the second prong of the magical solution, the Wizard of Oz approach to ocean conservation. Either the ocean fixes itself, or we'll develop some new technology that'll come along and save us. Latinos don't buy either of those magical claims. The oceans are so large that it is unlikely that humans will cause lasting damage. Again, 30% agree, which is worrisome, but 53% disagree. Climate change is not a real emergency, but is part of a natural process. Somewhat disturbingly, 37% agree with that, but 45% disagreed with that. So while the numbers there are closer than we would like, it is again the case that a plurality held the scientific position. Now, offshore drilling threatens the community health. I want to make clear that 76% of the respondents answered this question. The remaining 24 said that they didn't know. But of the 76 that answered, 60% said offshore drilling for oil and natural gas poses a health and safety threat to the community, whereas 16%, only 16%, said that it is primarily a hazard for tourism and people who live on the coast. There is an argument that people next to the coast are more sensitive, that people internally know that it's really just, a bunch of rich people with their nice views of the ocean or whatever who are at stake. And our poll suggests that Latinos reject that claim. They see the ocean and its well-being as a threat to the community and to their health. So let's explore some policy issues. Looking at sort of Azul's goals, should we do more to prevent plastic pollution? 92%. Conserving 30% of the land and 30% of waters by 2030, the 30-30-30 plan, 86% support. Create a legally binding international treaty to end plastic pollution, even if it means the US may have to follow difficult and expensive rules, 81% support. Ban the use of single-use plastic products, even if it means less convenient options, 80% support. Require switching cars and trucks that are hybrid or use electric power, 71% support. And I have some thoughts on why that number is smaller, but overall, I think you would have to agree that this is pretty strong support for much of the policy agenda that we talk about here. Should we increase ocean protections? Today, the US conserves about 20% of the land and 16% of the water as natural habitat for recreation and environmental preservation. Would you support the 30-30-30 plan? 80% said yes. They favored or strongly favored, and only 9% opposed. Would you support actions to ban offshore drilling of oil and natural gas and replace them with renewables? 78% supported and only 15% opposed. Now, I told you earlier in the show that we were going to talk a little bit about cost because I think it's important. So we followed up those questions with these two. Would you still support this goal if it meant the government spent more on conservation than it does today? 84% still supported the goal, even if it meant the government would spend more. Would you still support this goal if it raised prices for natural resource products that cost your family a bit more per month? 66% still supported. 2/3 of our respondents still supported goals of conservation, including offshore bans, even if it meant that they personally had to spend more. Finally, offshore drilling. 66% said that they agreed or strongly agreed that we should ban offshore oil and natural gas drilling, even if it means you may pay more for gasoline and household heating oil. Again, 2/3 of our respondents. That's astounding by any level. Could it be higher? Sure, it could be higher, and perhaps it will be higher at another day. But this struck all of us on the team at BSP and at Azul as a really encouraging sign that there's already huge support for taking action to protect the oceans. Among Spanish-speaking homes, support for the bans are higher. 56% were in favor and 34% opposed for the offshore ban. Among English-speaking households, the numbers were 70-22 among Spanish-speaking households. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to our friends at Azul. And once again, thank Marce and the entire team at Azul for the opportunity for Barreto Segura Partners to work on this project. And we hope this is the foundation of action into the future.
Thank you. And I think that's the very exciting part of this, is that we're looking at an overall approval of collective action, of systemic action, right? So when we talk about those policies, those bans, people are recognizing that there is power in those policies, right? One thing that was very exciting to me, struck me quite a bit, I had seen it in other polls before, was the stronger support among Spanish-speaking households. And you have some thoughts on that, but that is always really exciting and something to really take to heart as as we as a field work on our outreach. Gary, anything that really came out to you outside of this?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say is that this is a really big opportunity to invert a long-held narrative about Latino and for that matter, more broadly, communities of color and their attitudes towards the environment. I myself am guilty of writing statements like this in the early 2000s, that Latinos and other communities of color were going to be more concerned about brownfields and lead in clean drinking water, clean air in cities, because that was their proximate experience. And I do believe that they're very concerned about that. But at that time, we felt that most conservation issues would be not as important. And I was astounded at this poll. I assumed it would be positive, but I never imagined that we would get numbers in the 80% range of folks who were very concerned about the safety and the health of the ocean and willing to take action, even expensive action, to protect it.
And talking about expensive action, I think the context that needs to be highlighted here is that, when this poll was out in the field, it's a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at historically high, prices at the pump. So it's really even more interesting to see that very high support for actions like banning offshore drilling, while people are looking at trying to figure out how to fuel up their cars with, $6-7 a gallon gas if you're in California.
That's exactly correct. And of course, many Latino workers, particularly Latino male workers, are more reliant on automotive transportation to actually earn a living, which is somewhat different than you would find in some other socioeconomic strata. And it's also, these vehicles are more likely to be entirely gas using because of the expense of buying hybrid and all electric vehicles. it is difficult for communities with limited income, and there's very limited secondary market for hybrid and electric vehicles, at least so far. It's growing. So as a consequence, most of these folks are driving gas-using vehicles, and even knowing that it's going to hurt them directly, they're willing to protect the ocean.
That's just a stark recognition of the importance of the health of the ocean to everybody in their lives, and especially for their families. Betsy, do we have any questions?
Yes, so at this time, what we're going to ask is, we've been pooling questions from those who've been joining this live stream. Thanks to each of you. We do have a couple of questions to kick us off. If you do have questions, please go ahead and look at the card that is on your screen. You can go ahead and share those questions. research@azul.org. Again, that is research@azul.org. We're going ahead and we're going to pool those forward. And then while we wait for those to come, from folks in the room and online, we do have a couple of questions to get us started. And the first here, Marce, I think is actually well positioned for you. How can stakeholders use this new data?
I think the first thing, and it's something we're still doing ourselves, is to really study it in depth and try to dislodge any previous understandings and misunderstandings of our community, and just be very open about looking at who you're working with and why you're working with them and who you're reaching out to and when, very importantly, right? So not an afterthought, not a last minute, but really looking at, okay, if we're talking about offshore drilling, who's having those off the chart attitudes about banning offshore drilling? If we're talking about plastic, who should I be talking first? So I think it's very important that we as advocates and as the ocean field, we look at these numbers, we really internalize them, and we either look at what our internal capacity is in doing this work, cultural fluency, and B, whether we talk to partners, whether we talk to funders, whether we talk to especially elected officials also and decision makers about this and how. So just take it in, figure out how that fits in your work, and make sure that you're partnering early and often with folks to do this work.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question is for Gary. Gary, the question is, what do these results mean for policymakers now?
Well, that's an interesting question. On the one hand, I think the question is, are these results going to take anti-environmental policymakers and make them pro-environment? I think we have good evidence to suggest that that's not how politics works in the United States. But I do think its biggest impact is on those who would want to advocate for actions to protect the environment and the ocean particularly, who are fearful that their community is not concerned about that, or who are fearful that they will experience a backlash if they impose some regulations that have some external costs, but in order to accomplish the goals. For those representing Latinos, the message is you can lean in on this issue. You will have much more support than you will have backlash. And I think that's the biggest policy impact.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and refresh, give a moment to see if there are additional questions. Again, you can send those to research@azul.org. Okay. If there are no additional questions in the next 30 seconds, we're going to go ahead and conclude. So this is that moment. And again, just a reminder to those of you who are thinking about this data, going to go ahead and look at this data on azul.org's website. One of the things you can do is you can continue to send those questions to research@azul.org. We will ensure that those are sent over to Gary as well as to Marcela to be able to follow back up. Again, all of these results are also going to be available online. We have a question coming in. It says, question for Gary. Can you clarify what was meant by Spanish-speaking and English-speaking households? What other issues generally take precedent over environment for Latinos?
So households are categorized by the frequency with which Spanish is spoken in the household, self-reported by the respondent. So they'll tell us Spanish is spoken, several times a day, several times a week, or very rarely or almost never. And so we bifurcate it so that households which predominantly Spanish speaking are categorized as Spanish speaking households, and those who use Spanish very infrequently or not at all are categorized as English speaking households. With respect to what takes precedence over the environment, in the national polls that we've been doing for other clients, I would say it's been ranking about 5th. I would say inflation and the economy overall is hanging in there pretty highly, as you might not be surprised. Healthcare and healthcare costs, partly as a holdover of the COVID epidemic, but partly because of the ongoing challenge of getting affordable and quality care, stays there. Crime and safety, public safety, particularly the gun shootings, has gone up. And then the whole racial context in the society, the idea that at some level, parts of the society seem to be coming fraying a little bit at the seams. The level of intergroup hostility is higher, and that obviously reflects on both Latinos individually and then as an immigrant specifically. So those are issues you likely see percolate up, but the environment hangs in there. It's top 5 issue most of the time, if not all the time.
Excellent, thank you. Marcia, this next question is for you. It says, thank you so much for commissioning this poll. How does Azul plan to use this data for its campaigns?
Early and often. No, it's really exciting. Like I said, it's a reflection of what we've seen. And one thing I tell people is that I've never actually had to convince Latinos to care about the ocean in all my years of work, but definitely decision makers. So we will certainly be making sure that these facts get to decision makers. Obviously, we have very strong campaigns around 3030, supporting 3030, highly and fully protected areas, and abating plastic pollution. Another one is regulating illegal and unreported fishing. So those are our 3 top areas that we will be looking at. And I think that we will be communicating with decision makers very often to make sure that they know about this. And that other folks know about this, that Latinos in the community know about this, because, the field itself is fairly exclusive, and I think that sometimes people don't feel comfortable or welcomed. And I think this is an exciting rallying point for people to see themselves reflected, to see their power, political power reflected, and to be able to, and willing to step in and step up for this. We're very excited about that part.
Excellent, thank you so much. Gary, we're going to turn this one to you, and then we're going to ask Marcia the same question. Question comes in, reactions to the Inflation Reduction Act and its impact on ocean policy. So how does this connect, and what would those reactions be?
I don't think I can put it better
I'm
than
sorry,
Twitter.
I don't know.
Gary, that was a late breaking last night, and I don't know that I can put it better than the unmentionable Twitter reaction from a senator. But sorry. I think that speaks to the. Yep, go ahead. That speaks.
I just
to the
don't have
power
a.
Sorry.
You go ahead first.
I can jump in. It speaks to the public activism. It speaks to the power of the public. I know that a couple of weeks we were at impasse. Everybody was very sad. The talks had broken down. And really, it speaks to the power of folks taking action. It speaks to the power of people that kept up, that made sure that decision makers knew what the priority was. And it was late breaking, and it was a very exciting surprise. I haven't been able to look at all the details. I know that there's very good news there for coastal restoration and ocean protection in general. I still have to digest all of that, but in general, I think the exciting part is, please, if you care about something, act on it, because it does change things for the better.
I don't have I would agree entirely. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of a bill that may not even fully be written yet, but it does appear that the outcome is going to be better than we anticipated after several weeks, months, more than a year of frustration. And that's exciting. I will say that the idea that we will reallocate $750 billion of cost to the highest earning income earners and corporations and take meaningful action on climate and global sea rise and whatnot is long overdue and welcome. So I'm actually very pleased and hope very much that it's passed into law very quickly.
Excellent, thank you. This next question, I will share it as it reads, and then I'm going to make a quick note. It says, any advice for strategizing how to tie environmental issues with issues that are higher ranking in importance? And just to note that when we say higher ranking in importance, this is an individual's perception of what those high ranking issues may be. You can share where this polling is at, and Gary can share where this is, ranking with other things such as immigration and various issues. So again, any advice for strategizing how to tie environmental issues in with those other very important issues of our day?
Obviously, you always want to find people where they are, and that's the first rule of community organizing. I don't think that you have to be tying it to anything. It is obviously the results speak for themselves. They are strong. They're, I don't know what the English word is right now, and it's contundentes. They're strong and very assertive. And so I think that this is important enough to our community that you should give folks the benefit of the doubt and reach out to them without the need to tie them onto anything. Because the fact is that the interest and the political interest is reflected there. You can always certainly try to reach people where they are, but my sense is that there's no need given these results.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also say that the natural tie between environmental policy and issues ranging with health is very, very closely connected. Air quality, water quality, available drinking water, suspended particulate pollution in the air, the level of juvenile asthma among Latino communities, like the connections between environment and health are not only manifest, but natural and an important association. And I think we're now about 10 years into trying to correctly, I think, associate renewable energy, ending environmental degradation, and moving to more innovative solutions as an economic policy that results in more and better paying jobs.
Excellent. We're going to go ahead and do another refresh of questions to see if there are any additional ones that have come in. There are none just yet. Again, that is research@azul.org. Okay. Well, at this time, what we'll do is if you go ahead and you send us those questions, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. Marce, we're going to toss it over to you for some closing remarks. And again, thank you to all for tuning in. Marce?
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of our partners. I see, yes, thank you. BSP Research. Thank you to Dr. Lubchenco for joining us today. Thank you to López-Wagner Strategies and LRS, and of course the team at Azul. Overwhelming thank you to the funders of this poll. This is the Packard Foundation, Ocean Kind, Moore, and Walton Foundation. I think this needs to be the first of its kind. It's a long time that we get here, but I'm excited, I am hopeful, and I'm ready to get to work with even stronger assertiveness on this. Mil gracias, y gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you.